Hi, boys and girls. Miss Kathy and Seuss here once again from Shaler, North Hills Library, and we have another episode of Get off, Seuss. Susie, come on, off. Superheroes of STEAM. And today we are doing Beatrix Potter, Scientist. Now, you may know her from many of the books that she has written, and there are a large number of them. But did you know she was a scientist as well? So let's find out about it in Lindsay Metcalf's book, Beatrix Potter, Scientist. Let's see if we can get close here so you can see the pictures. You may know this girl, or who she'll become. Someone who makes pictures of cuddly animals and writes your bedtime stories. But there's more to her story. She observes, questions, collects, records. Beatrix is a girl of science, even if she may not know it yet. See her there, giggling and splashing in the steps of the whistling postman? His dirty boots carry him on mail routes past miles of mushrooms and moss. He can't help but look and learn from the lush landscape edging the Scottish Highlands. Nature enchants Beatrix, too. She absorbs lessons on art and photography so she can capture every rock, every flower, every bug. This way, she can take Scotland home. Back on the outskirts of London, Beatrix sneaks nature inside, past her mother, past the staff. A bit older now, Beatrix and her brother Bertram fill their nursery with bunnies and bats and newts, snakes and frogs and mice. But when the animals die, after she cries, she removes their flesh to admire their bones. There's care in every measurement, from head to fingers to tail. Beatrix draws them again and again, outside and in. That's science. So they had bunnies and other animals living there, but because the bunnies weren't left outside, they did die. And she observed them. Now a young woman, Beatrix stows her specimens in London and sets off into the countryside with her family. She grabs her sketchbook and roams through northern England and Scotland, eyes open to the world so wide. Always she wants to copy any beautiful object which strikes the eye. Sometimes she adds a twist of whimsy. Always she writes. Look there. What does Beatrix see? Tiny fungus people singing and bobbing and dancing. She blinks away the vision of fairies trotting among the toadstools, but thousands of mushrooms remain. Joy of joy, she writes. They hold mystery on their own. She peers closer and sees the colors. She slices, sketches, and scopes every gill, every scale, every spore. The microscope reveals a new world. Beatrix can't stop drawing. Who will understand? Probably not her parents. They have equipped her with cameras and experiences and tutors. But school is for Bertram. Who will understand? The Scottish postman, of course. The man she knew when she was little more than a spore herself. The shy postman who stashes plants in his satchel so he can study them at home. Beatrix and Charles Mackintosh discuss how to draw dainty details under the microscope, how to classify each fungus by name. They promise to share their work. Beatrix's train returns to the city. Soon a piece of Scotland arrives in London. Beatrix tears open the package from Charlie and inhales a mushroom scent of fresh-cut hay. "Curiously strong and pleasant," she writes, and paints the sample with delicate strokes. Then she mails her artwork to Charlie. Perhaps if Beatrice draws enough, learns enough, her art could fill a science book someday. It's acceptable for Victorian women like Beatrix to excel at painting. Beatrix hopes to earn money and freedom from her parents' rule, even if by selling silly pictures of rabbits wearing coats. Back in the country, Beatrix tugs up her starched dresses and trudges through the bogs, woodlands, and dung where mushrooms bloom. She has questions. How do fungi survive the winter? Do they spread underground? Is it true that spores sprout like seeds? She wrecks her parents' London kitchen in her hunger for answers. She concocts a solution to nudge the spores to life. Toiling day and night in her ramshackle lab, Beatrix zooms in with a microscope to check and record her specimens. She can taste the breakthrough that is sure to come. Finally, yes, spores do sprout like seeds, and Beatrix is among the first to grow them in Britain. Before long, the sprouts tangle in a network of filaments called mycelium. This must be the underground form Beatrix envisioned. To be sure, she exhausts herself studying dense volumes on fungi, written in German. Then Beatrix drafts her findings for all of science to share. A prominent natural history society could publish her paper, but it's the 1890s, and these London scientists do not allow women to join them. Beatrix believes her work is too important to keep to herself. She earns a ticket to enter the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew and mingles with some of Britain's best botanists. But most of the plant scientists there dismiss her as an amateur. Amateur means she never had schooling. Beatrix may not be a professional, but she has pluck. She returns again and again, at first jumpy as a bunny, then growing braver, like a bull. She knows of a well-published scientist who can help, if she can convince him. Her heart pounds. She clutches her slides and marches up to George Massey, one of the people in charge of Kew's plant specimens. George has been trying to germinate spores with no luck. He peers through his spectacles with uncertainty. George cannot deny that Beatrix has sprouted more than 40 kinds of spores. He decides to try her methods. Finally, success. George agrees to present Beatrix's paper at a society meeting. She waits for news. What is happening behind those doors? George returns with a disappointing message about Beatrix's paper. They say it requires more work, she writes to her old friend Charlie. So she withdraws her paper, rallies her resolve, and returns to her lab. She sprouts more, absorbs more, draws more, until she doesn't. What makes her stop? Does she suspect that she will never be taken seriously as a scientist? Does she begin to doubt herself? Like pages ripped from a book, history holds those secrets. But the next chapter is all there. Beatrix Potter steps into the sunshine and tries something else, something not altogether different. She pulls out an old letter, one with pictures. A young friend had been sick in bed and needed some good cheer. Her bunny, Herb Peter Rabbit, looks so real on paper he nearly hops off the page. This is no leap for Beatrix, even as she tucks away her fungi paintings for good. She doesn't forget what she knows of nature. She follows her muse to a place where science informs art, a place of whimsy, grounded in fact. Beatrix has studied every detail of her world, small and big, flowers and fungus, inside and out, and molded it all into something new, so she could share it with you and the whole world through. And then it has a page with more about Beatrix Potter. Born in 1866 to wealthy parents, Helen Beatrix Potter grew up observing everything around her. When her family left London and vacationed in the countryside, they carried sketchbooks. Beatrix wanted to know every little detail about her world. So she studied and drew a range of subjects: fossils, plants, insects, ancient artifacts, with scientific precision. Some of Beatrix's earliest scientific endeavors revolved around the family's pets. Beatrix and Bertram kept a variety of animals. Rabbits, yes, but also frogs, mice, birds, newts, a snake, and others. While the Potters adored their animals, they believed that after death the animals' bodies were gifts for study. Many times the children boiled them so they could remove the skin and muscles and preserve the skeletons. So these are kids doing this in their kitchen. That may sound gruesome, but artists in the late 19th century often did this to understand how animals were built, so they could draw them accurately. As a young girl, Beatrix traveled with her family each year to Scotland, where she met the postman naturalist Charles Mackintosh. As an adult, she sought him out to show him her drawings of fungi. The shy, bewhiskered retiree with dirty boots became an unlikely mentor for a starched and pedigreed young woman like Beatrix. That means she was brought up in a very proper family. They shared common interests in the growth and classification of rare and common fungi, and he gave Beatrix tips about how to draw microscopic details. Beatrix continued to correspond with Charles throughout the 1890s and produced more than 350 drawings of fungi, mosses, and germinating spores. Not only did Beatrix arrange for Charlie to send specimens of fungi, she spent more than 10 years hunting for them herself. She found them in bogs, in the woods, on a broomstick outside her house, even on a piece of horse dung. You know what horse dung is? Horse poop. She learned their scientific names and examined the specimens under a microscope, then drew them in various forms: whole, sliced, scraped, and sectioned. She developed enough knowledge that she started seeking answers to questions about fungi that few professional scientists had asked. She took her results to the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew, whose scientists initially didn't believe an amateur scientist, a female amateur, would be capable of making a discovery. But when Beatrix germinated her spores again and again, The Q scientists tried the experiment themselves. With the help and encouragement of her uncle, Sir Henry Enfield Roscoe, a knighted and renowned chemist, Beatrix wrote about germinating spores in a paper for the Linnean Society, a group of London's foremost experts in natural history. It was Kew scientist George Massey who agreed in 1897 to submit the paper on Beatrix's behalf. The paper, entitled On the Germination of the Spores of Agaricinae, a suborder of gilled mushrooms, was not approved for publication, and Beatrix withdrew it from consideration. She wrote to Charles Mackintosh that Linnean scientists said her paper needed more work before it could be printed. The paper was never printed, and it was lost to history. Experts can only guess about whether she made a true discovery, because Beatrix's journal only hints at the focus of her work. The journal ended in 1897, shortly after she made contact with the Linnean Society, but she was later shown to be among the first British people to germinate spores from the group of fungi she worked with. I'm going to try to say this name here. Basidiomycetes, which includes most mushrooms and toadstools. A century after she submitted her paper, the Linnean Society apologized for how it treated Beatrix and other women. Beatrix juggled her passions for art and nature. The day after she found a rare fungus, she wrote the first draft of her most famous story in the form of a picture letter. 5-year-old Noel Moore, the son of her friend, was sick, so she wrote him a story about her bunny, Peter Piper. She must have been thinking of fungi and her friend Charles Mackintosh, because the Mr. McGregor character looked quite like him. Beatrix didn't pursue publication of The Tale of Peter Rabbit for another 8 years. In the meantime, she grew more passionate about fungi. During the decade Beatrix studied fungi, she wrote several other illustrated letters to children in addition to the one she had written to Noel. Noel's mother encouraged Beatrix to write books about her characters. In 1901, Beatrix made 250 copies of The Tale of Peter Rabbit. This attracted the publisher, Frederick Warne and Company, which released her story widely the following year. Beatrix went on to create dozens of books for children, including some published after her death in 1943. If you look closely, you'll find fungi in The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin, The Tale of Johnny Town Mouse, and The Fairy Caravan. And that is the end. They give you a little timeline here, which shows you different dates that things happened in Beatrix's life. Some of them important ones: 1866, she was born in a borough of London, England. First drawing of a fungus was in 1887, so she would have been 11 years old. Nope, sorry, 21 years old. In September of 1893, she wrote her first draft of the Peter Rabbit book. And then, in 1893, the next day, she writes a picture letter to Noel's brother about Mr. Jeremy Fisher, the frog. So they were written one day apart. And then she publishes her rabbit story under the name H.B. Potter, because we know from the very first sentence of this thing that we were reading, Helen was her first name. Beatrix was actually her middle name. Frederick Warne and Company reissues her first book in 1902. That was 1 year after she published it herself. The Tale of Peter Rabbit. The first run of 8,000 copies that they made sold out very quickly. And in 1906, that's 4 years later, they published The Tale of Mr. Jeremy Fisher. 1930 in 1913, she was 47 years old when she married William Hewis. And then 30 years later, she died of bronchitis and heart disease when she was 77 years old. 59 of Beatrix's drawings appear in Finley's book, Wayside and Woodland Fungi, which I guess is like a famous book if you like to study fungi. And in 1997, the Linnean Society apologized for treatment of Beatrix and other women. So that was exactly 100 years after George Massey tried to get her paper published, and they wouldn't consider it strongly. Okay, so that is the story of how she was actually pursuing scientific endeavors while writing these picture books that we know and love. So we have a very thick packet. If you printed out some or all of it today, you can see that because she's not most famous for her scientific stuff, so I included a lot of stuff about her books in here too. There's a good website to go to, and then there are lots of websites that have printable stuff you can print out and activities you can do. I listed some of them here, and I included some in this packet. And then there are coloring pages, and there are some crafts, and I was going to show you what some of these packages end up being. You have a garden helper one, and when you cut that apart, you can make a booklet with it that looks like this. You can staple it at the top, and each page is a little longer than the other so that the name hangs out. And then on the inside, you can write things about that ladybug that you look up, or about the spider. You can draw a picture too. You can do all kinds of things. I didn't go that far, but I wanted you to see how it looks when you cut out these two sheets that look like that to start with. This is what you end up with. So however you want to illustrate or write more on there, you can do it. And then there's a sheet, since she grew up in England, sights to see in England, and there are 4 sites that are listed specifically, and they have pictures on this other sheet to cut out and put in the right sites. If you're not familiar with London at all, you have to look it up and do a matchup type thing. And that gives you something that looks like this. And then there are 2 other places that are not listed on here, but are listed on the other sheet. Windsor Castle and the White Cliffs of Dover, which are places to see in England. So that was another activity sheet. And Where in the World is England was a little fold-out booklet. Looks like this in your packet. And when you actually do it, you end up with a booklet like this. Where in the world is England? And you open it up, and it shows you what continent is England on. You have to figure that out and find England on the map above and color it in. So you have to look that up on your computer, but this is how you can cut it out and paste it in and have a little window booklet that you can open up. Okay, then there is a Mr. McGregor's Garden. And you can do is make a color for each plant that you want to plant in your garden. Oh, Susie, get off my crafts here. And then you go over and you put it on this sheet, spacing it out the way they say. So if, for example, if you make lettuce green on this sheet, you need to find 1 inch apart for all your lettuce. So if you're saying one of these squares is 1 inch, if you put a lettuce down here in the corner, you can't put any other lettuce right next to that. You can put a row 1 inch away and leave a row blank and branch out like that. And then say you want to plant some peas. Well, if you want to plant peas, you need 2 inches between those plants. So if you start in this corner and put some peas right there, you have to leave the next 2 rows blank. And then maybe you color peas purple. I know peas aren't purple, but we made lettuce green, so you have to make peas a different color. And you can go around and plant peas and try to space it out so that you get different things. You could plant carrots and then you could make them orange and that would be a different color. And if you plant carrots according to the chart, you only need to leave 1 inch of space between them. So you can arrange your garden however you would like and use whatever colors you would like. And keep track of the colors on this chart here. Okay, so that was planning Mr. McGregor's garden. You can look up the things that are actually in his garden from the book and do only those ones if you want. And then another activity sheet I printed out was Peter Rabbit characters that you can color and cut out. And then there is actually some clothes you can put on them too. There's a dress for the mother. Here's Mother Rabbit. And there's her shawl. These are Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail. So if you wanted to have 3 of them, you would need to print this 3 times and have 3. Oh, and there's Mother's umbrella and basket. And then we have Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail's cape here. And Peter Rabbit's coat. And there's Peter Rabbit. So you can make some puppets and tell the story of Peter Rabbit yourself. That was one thing you could do. And let's see what else there was. There were some coloring sheets. I mentioned about the site you can do too for coloring, all different sheets. There was a crossword puzzle. How well do you know Beatrix Potter? And you might need to look up some of these books if you're not familiar with them, or information about her. And it says, what did Beatrix study before submitting a paper to the Linnean Society? Well, see, we had that in our book. And that is number 2 down. So 2 down is probably fungi, F-U-N-G-I, because that's what we were reading about, huh? But I did, at least I think I did. I guess I didn't include a answer sheet because there wasn't one. But this was, how well do you know Beatrix Potter? And then this one here was on the subject of rabbits, a whole crossword puzzle about rabbits. And then there was a whole crossword puzzle about characters' names. So Mr. Jeremy, and you have to give his last name. And it says it's 6 letters long. And it gives you different other characters from her little set of animal books. So that's one with character names. There is a maze you can fill out. Help Peter Rabbit find his way back to his friends. There are bunny trails. Follow along the different trails, A, B, C, and D, to get down here which one is going to take you. Because only one ends up down by the friends. There is a word search with some of her favorite characters, so you can probably get some of the last names for that one crossword puzzle from right here. Just a little clue. And what else we got in here? We got a whole bunch of stuff. So that's a little trickier word search. If you want a little bit easier one, there is one here for a little bit younger people. Again, using some names of characters from our book. You can make a pom-pom mouse. You can do some things now relating to science, like a fungi crossword puzzle, Meet the Mushroom. And I give you some information about it here. And oh, I did give you the answers, since that one was a little bit trickier if you didn't know the scientific words. Parts of a mushroom you can label, look it up on the computer, and label the mushroom template. And I give you the answer to that too, in case you want to check your work. And then there are some masks that you can make from some of her main characters. There are about 6 of them, I think. There's a Peter Rabbit mask, and a Tom Kitten, and Mrs. Piggywinkle, the hedgehog. And you color them out, color them and cut them out, and there are dots that you can put some string around, tied around your face. Benjamin Bunny, Peter's cousin, Mr. Jeremy Fisher the frog. That's kind of a fun one. Who wouldn't want to be a frog? And Jemima Puddle Duck. Quack, quack. So a whole bunch of masks you can make. And then I think that was it for the printables. Have a whole bunch of stuff, but let's take a look at our sheet again here. So I think I mentioned those beginning sites. You can listen to a podcast about Beatrix and see some of her real sketches. That's what's really cool to look at. Not only the photographs of her, but her sketches that aren't animal books. The drawings of the fungus and things that she was so famous for. And there's one with an interview of the author of this book, Lindsay Metcalf, and exploring lichens and mushrooms to help you do that one crossword puzzle page. Check out more of her accurate drawings here. And at this site, print out the stand-up characters we saw and make the puppets. So there's a lot of activities to do on this sheet. I hope you enjoy at least some of them, and that you enjoyed learning a little bit more about our friend Beatrix Potter, who is more than just an author. She was a scientist as well. So thank you for joining me here today, and Seuss as well. Hey, Susie, can you say hi? Oh, there she is. And I will see you next time on Superheroes of STEAM. This has been Miss Kathy from Shaler North Hills Library. And remember, if you would like to check out your own Superheroes of STEAM books and learn about a lot of amazing people and the things they did, come on in. We're open 6 days a week, and we would love to see you. So stop in anytime, and you can browse the shelves yourself. If you don't want to do that, we are still happy to fill requests for you, and you can pick them up at our window. I will see you soon. Bye.